They're saying that you're anti-Muslim. They're saying that you're anti-black. Does it hurt your feelings that they are making you into a hater?
How is President Trump handling all the personal attacks that come daily his way? Tonight, he will tell us.
We've had extraordinarily little opportunity to actually gather and present evidence to court.
We faulted the government for exactly the same thing.
The Federal Court of Appeals right now evaluating whether it should resume the president's executive order on refugees. We'll have the latest. Also ahead tonight, Gutfeld and McGurk on Trump derangement syndrome. Caution.
You are about to enter the no spin zone. The factor begins right now. Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. We are live, waiting for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals to decide whether or not President Trump's executive order constraining some refugees abroad will be allowed to go forward. Deliberations are going on right now. The moment anything happens, you will know it. Also, the Talking Points memo on President Trump breaking big news in his interview with me will be in our second block this evening. But first, the final part of our interview with Mr. Trump. This time around, we focused on the personal.
What is the most surprising thing for you about this job you have? You come from the private sector, no political office. Now you're the President of the United States. What surprised you?
I think the size, the magnitude of everything. So I was a very big real estate person. I'd build a building for $500 million or $900 million. And here you look at an airplane contract where you can save $600 million on 90 planes. I saved more than $600 million. I got involved in negotiation on a fighter jet, the F-35. And by the way, Lockheed Martin, a great company. But they weren't bringing their price up. I got involved. I saved more than $600 million. I was very proud of that. But the magnitude of, you can do that at every level of government. My new thing is going to be pharma, because we pay too much. We're the largest drug purchaser in the world, and they don't negotiate.
How many hours a day are you working?
I'm working long hours, right up till 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning.
What time do you get up?
5 o'clock.
All right. And you're working after you have breakfast and stuff?
I read the papers. I see what's going on television. Right. I take a look. I see the lies that, that's another thing. I always got sort of good press. I was a business guy. I got good press. I did good.
I know.
I have never, I call it, fake news. Some of the networks and some of the papers, it's so the level of dishonesty, where they'll take a story that should be good. I know good from bad.
Sure.
They'll take something that should be a good story. In fact, sometimes I'll say, oh, this is going to be nice to read. I'll say, whoa. And they will purposely totally change it away. It's fake news.
Why are they doing that?
Well, because I'm on the other side of the equation. I don't think they did it to Reagan, but not as much.
Why, though? I don't understand.
I just think that it's just the other side of the coin. It's a... they call themselves progressive, which is a beautiful word, but it's not true.
Do you think
when
they
you look
don't
at what
like
happens,
you?
I don't know. I think they don't like I don't think they like anybody on our side.
I know you a long time, and I know that, when people attack you personally, that bothers you. So they're saying that you're anti-Muslim. They're saying that you're anti-black. They're saying that you're anti-poor. Do you respond? Because you do come back.
I always respond.
I mean, but does it hurt your feelings that they are making you into a hater?
No, because they always do it. The first thing they do with the Republicans or conservatives is the racist card. They pull out the racist card. They always do that, not just me. I mean, they do it with everybody. And I see that, and once you know that, you feel a lot better about it.
Is there any validity to the criticism of you that you say things you can't back up factually? And as the president, you could do that as a candidate or a businessman. But if you say, for example, that there are 3 million illegal aliens who voted, and then you don't have the data to back it up, some people are going to say that's irresponsible for a president to say that. Is there any validity to that?
Many people have come out and said I'm right. You know that.
I know, but you got to have data to back that up.
Let me just tell you. And it doesn't have to do with the vote, although that's the end result. It has to do with the registration. And when you look at the registration and you see dead people...
Do you think you're going to be proven correct in that statement?
Well, I think I already have. A lot of people have come out and said that I am correct.
Yeah, but the data has to show that 3 million illegals voted.
We have a lot of different... you go to the voting booths and you see what's going on, but forget that. Forget all of that. Just take a look at the registration, and we're going to do it. And I'm going to set up a commission to be headed by Vice President Mike Pence, and we're going to look at it very, very carefully.
Well, that's good. Let's get to the bottom of this. Do you ever think you're going to convince the media, the American media, to give, and I know that you don't feel you're getting a fair shot, okay? So
well,
that's
you don't either.
In many cases,
you don't, because I watch and you say,
in many
I've
cases,
never seen anything.
You're not getting a fair shot because, as you said, ideology drives the news coverage, and it shouldn't. News coverage should be news coverage, not ideological. I'm an analyst. I can do whatever I want, and I've criticized you, and you know it, and you've come right back at me, and that's good. That's a good thing. But there are entities in this country that despise you and your administration. Do you think you can ever convince them to take it down a bit?
Yes, I do. I think so. I think success will do that. I think jobs will do that. I think companies coming back into our country will do that. Yeah, I think I can. Not all the way. I'll never get it all the way back. Hey, look, I was named, it used to be Man of the Year, now it's Person of the Year by Time Magazine. But even on the cover, when they talked about divided nation. I don't think it's fair. Maybe other people do think it's fair, but I think I can bring it back. Yeah, I think success, jobs, lots of other things can bring it back.
All right, last question. You get 4 hours of sleep or some crazy thing like that. When your head hits the pillow, do you ever say to yourself, I can't believe I'm here. I cannot believe that I am the President of the United States. When I wasn't a politician, I didn't start out this way. That wasn't my life goal. Does that ever come into your mind?
Well, I must tell you, the other day I walked into the main entrance of the White House, and I said to myself, this is sort of amazing. Then I walked into the Oval Office, and I've had the head of Ford and General Motors and all of these people now as they come to see me because I want to hear from them, and they walk into the Oval Office and they have beautiful offices and they feel the same way. Or you walk into Air Force One. It's like a surreal experience in a certain way, but you have to get over it because there's so much work to be done, whether it's jobs or other nations that truly hate us, truly hate us and are looking to do damage. You have to get over it.
Mr. President, thanks very much for taking the time.
Next on the rundown, the talking points memo about the president breaking big news in that interview. And later, Dana Perino on whether all the turbulence at the White House is accomplishing anything for the folks. The Factor is coming right back. And in the Impact segment tonight, the talking points memo. President Trump breaking big news in his interview with me. The headline grabber was Mr. Trump talking about Putin. The president saying the USA is guilty of some deadly judgments itself, and we should not be so ready to condemn the Russian leader. That was flashy, but not really all that substantial. As we explained last night, President Trump wants to make a deal with Putin that would encourage Russia to help us crush ISIS and neutralize Iran. So he's not going to alienate Putin at this time. Now, you may remember that President Roosevelt dealt with Stalin, a killer who makes Putin look like Little Bo Peep. FDR did that to defeat Hitler. Also, the president tweeted, President Trump, Barack Obama made deals with Iran, even though the mullahs are big-time killers. So history is full of compromises, something that was not pointed out by the media in its rush to bash Trump over Putin. To me, the most important thing the president said in that interview was that he will hold Iran accountable for aggressive actions. That's a huge difference from President Obama, who did not want to confront Iran. Also, Mr. Trump will apparently punish sanctuary cities by withholding some federal funds. Like the refugee deal, that will lead to court challenges and things will get nasty. The far left will mobilize its protest apparatus that's organized now. The president will be labeled a bigot and on and on. However, I do not believe Donald Trump's going to back down from the sanctuary city deal. The other breaking news had to do with tax cuts, president saying they will happen this year. Also, Obamacare, which looks like it'll take a little longer to dismantle than Mr. Trump originally thought. All in all, a lot of news came out of a 36-minute interview. As Talking Point stated last night, the president was direct and confident in his positions. That, of course, drives the Trump haters absolutely mad. And that's a memo. Now, for reaction, joining us from Chicago, Dr. Austin Goolsbee, former member of President Obama's cabinet. So, Doctor, I think Iran, as I stated, was most important. What say you?
Well, I thought that was interesting. I hadn't thought about the Iran point as being the biggest news to come out of it. There was a lot of news, you're right, in 36 minutes. Now, I had to go look at the transcript or watch it again. I thought on many of those he was not as determined as maybe you portrayed him. So like with the tax cut, you said, is there going to be a tax cut? And he says something like, I certainly hope so, or I think there will be, which I thought was sort of news making the other way of, wait a minute, it's not the first priority, and it might not be this year. So
no,
I don't know.
When I was there, you get a feel for it. They're going to introduce the tax cuts soon, and I think by the fall there'll be some definition on that. The debate will be how much, corporate versus individual, and all of that. But be that as it may, the thing that jumped out at you in the entire interview as being important to the American people was what?
Actually, there were two feelings that jumped out at me as most important. And one was a thing I did, and the other was a thing that I'm a little afraid for Donald Trump on. The one I didn't like is he showed at numerous points, you kind of pressed him on, hey, you're the president now, you got to be factual, you can't just shoot off, and you cited the 3 million illegal immigrant voters, and before that you had kind of asked him about the visas, and he repeated again this thing of only 109 people were affected. He kind of wasn't having it. He wasn't buying into your premise, and he has continued that, stating things that are demonstrably not true, and he needs to stop that. Otherwise, we're going to bog down. And
doesn't his history of hyperbole, throwing things out there, explain that to some extent? And is it really important?
Yeah.
Is it really important that he says 109 people were inconvenienced? I don't care about that, whether it's 109, 250, 312. See, I think the media's hung up on this gotcha game. There are some things he has to be factual about.
You might be right, but Bill, you know that there's something to it. That's why you asked him about it. And I didn't like that he kind of gave you no quarter. He was like, no, I was right.
I wanted him to explain what the line was, and he did. He said that in the 3 million, it's registration, it's the system is broken.
Look, it might be fair, but the other feeling that I got is, having been through the White House experience at the beginning, I don't think Donald Trump yet understands that the first 3 months you're there, that's the most fun you're ever going to have as the president. He's getting upset at how but we grind our presidents up. I mean, he's not going to be the first president.
So you were there when Barack Obama was elected in 2008, and then he took office in 2009. You came in with him.
Yeah, it was. Yes, I was there.
And you were having a blast there, Doctor? You were having a great time?
We were in a crisis. So I won't say, as I always say, I didn't go to Washington for the fun, and I wasn't disappointed. But I will say that was the most fun that we had.
Yeah, because you had to deal with the recession and a lot of the businesses failing and a lot. But you had one advantage that Donald Trump doesn't have. You had a very compliant media, very compliant media. It was rooting for you to succeed.
That's where I'm afraid for him. That's where I'm afraid for him, which is the media slowly gets more and more cynical. They get tougher and tougher.
They can't get any more cynical than they are now.
And they're already started tough on him. I'm not disputing. They already started tough on him. But I think after 3 or 4 months, when you actually have to sit down and work through specifics, and you're done with the kind of the first 3 weeks where you get to sign executive orders and you're doing exciting stuff, and then they start saying, wait a minute, this tax rate is too high, and what do you mean you're going to take my loophole away? And he's going to be fighting with Congress, he's going to be fighting with the media. It's not going to be fun. and he's not getting enough sleep. I mean, that was clear
4
from
hours
your
is-
interview.
Yeah, but he's always been that way.
Approach.
He's always been a vampire in the sense that he doesn't go to sleep at night. I just think that's his physiology. But I think your analysis is a fair analysis. I mean, I think you basically, he is a man who's unique, but I don't think the press can get any worse. I disagree with you there. I don't think it can get any worse.
Oh, they
well,
can
you
get
guys
meaner,
had a
that's for
honeymoon.
sure.
The Obama people had a honeymoon. This guy came in with knives just coming at him every second. But he doesn't really care,
but that's
Doc.
his honeymoon. That's my point. That's exactly my point.
I think he's, basically going to fight back with the tweeting, and I think that media has lost a lot of prestige in this country. Doctor, as always, thank you. Directly ahead, Bernie Goldberg has some thoughts about the massive reaction to the Trump interview. And later, Gutfeld and McGurk on Trump derangement syndrome. Those reports after these messages. Weekdays with Bernie segment tonight is bringing in the purveyor, BernardGoldberg.com, and joins us from Miami. So before the interview with the president, you said on this program that these Super Bowl chats don't usually amount to much. Was this one different?
I think what I said, at least last week, in fact, I know what I said last week, was that there's one day of the year that we don't need to hear from politicians, and that's Super Bowl Sunday. The day before, the day after, fine. But for me and for many others, we don't want to hear from politicians on that day. Okay, that's my opinion. On the bigger point regarding your interview, specifically the Putin killer exchange, which you don't think is all that important. Here's what is important: the conservative reaction to that statement. Imagine if last Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, you were interviewing President Obama, and you said, "Do you respect Putin?" And he said, "Yeah." And you said, "He's a killer." And he rolled his eyes and said, "Yeah, well, there are a lot of killers, You think we're so innocent?" The people watching us tonight, those people would be outraged. They'd accuse him of treason. They would never, ever, ever forgive him. Where's the conservative outrage over this statement?
Well, look at Mitch McConnell and Rubio in Florida in your state. There were a lot of Republicans that came out against that.
They came out mildly against it, and I'm talking about the people who watch conservative television.
But you're always talking about the zealots. You're always you're bringing the zealots more prominence. Look, you've heard some of the letters that have been written about I had a letter yesterday from a lady who goes, "Well, we hated the interview because you only should ask questions that put Donald Trump in a good light." I mean, zealots are zealots.
Where were the? I know that was. You know what? We ought to do a segment someday on the role of the media, because I think a lot of the people watching don't have a clue
But they
as to
don't
what
like
the media is.
They don't think it's a necessary
No,
thing in the USA.
They think that you should be a cheerleader
Yeah.
for people that they like.
That they like.
But listen,
that's a small
you came
percentage, though, Bernie. It's
I
not a
don't
big
know about
percentage.
that.
No, it's not.
And I think that the interpretation that you came up with, that he has to deal with bad people. We all know presidents have to deal with bad people. Here's my question, Bill. Donald Trump has told us on more than one occasion how smart he is. Why didn't he say, Bill, you know what? I have to deal with people who don't necessarily win humanitarian awards, okay? FDR had to deal with Stalin. Let's leave it at that, Bill, okay? Next question. He didn't say that. He left it to you to give a generous interpretation of what he actually meant.
An accurate interpretation. But his point on the Putin business was that we don't have the right to make judgments, the American government, because we've done bad stuff too. Now, was that a mistake? I wouldn't have said it. I wouldn't have said that, because Putin is so much worse than any American president. And I said that to him. I said, we don't have individual politicians that are killers. We don't have that. And he glanced up. But the bottom, he wants a deal with Putin. He wants this deal.
No, I get that. That makes sense. That makes sense. But you know what I would have said, and I'm not second-guessing it. I told you I don't like second-guessing people who do big, important interviews. What I would have said is, Mr. President, I know you have to deal with bad people. I know you have to deal with bad people. But why didn't you say, Mr. President, it's not. I don't deal with Mother Teresa all the time. I have to deal with bad
I mean, look, in the heat of the
people.
moment, nobody knows my questions. You say what you say.
But very briefly, you know the people who would have come up with the interpretation of, well, he was only saying that he has to deal with it. Hardcore progressives who don't think much of America. That's the way they talk. That's not the way any president,
they didn't
including
stick up
President
for
Trump,
did
should
they?
talk.
They didn't stick up for Trump. That's an interesting point. Because the progressive far left, which says, yeah, America's the worst. America's the biggest villain. When Trump said that, they didn't go, yes, President Trump. No, they were indignant as well.
I'll tell you why in 5 seconds. Because even if he says something they agree with, they'll disagree with it.
Yeah, they'll hate him
even
anyway.
If he comes
It doesn't
up,
matter.
Even if he comes up with a cure for cancer, they'll find fault with him.
Right.
So
now
that's the answer they would have given. The one he gave is the one the hardcore left would have given, and that should make all of us, including the Trump supporters watching,
But
that should make all of us feel
I'm putting an
uncomfortable.
asterisk next to it because I know what the strategy is. Now, final question. Okay, now, Putin may be coming after me, Goldberg, and it's your fault because you encouraged me to do these things. You know, do you feel if I disappear, or I can't even eat any food now?
Well, no, I have a solution.
Okay.
Your very fine executive producer, David Tabakoff, needs to be your food tester and drink tester. He needs to test the food and beverages before they go near your lips.
See, they have these little umbrellas where they go, and a little dart comes out at you or something. So now when it rains, I can't go outside. Bernie Goldberg, everybody. Plenty more ahead as the factor moves along this evening. Will President Trump's executive order temporarily stopping refugees from 7 nations coming here stand? Deliberations going on right now. We are monitoring them live. But next, Dana Perino on whether all the turbulence coming out of the White House is hurting or helping the nation. I hope you stay tuned for those reports. Personal story segment tonight. Seems like every day there's another controversy coming out of the White House. Some of it's predictable, as the national media, as we said, generally despises President Trump and is doing everything possible to hammer him. But there's some validity to the fact that the president himself likes controversy and creates it by tweeting aggressive things. So now Dana Perino, co-host of The Five, former spokesperson for President Bush the Younger. So in the Bush White House, you were there, even during the war in Iraq and the recession, the bad recession, okay, there wasn't this much controversy coming out of that building, was there?
Well, I think that in a way it's not comparable to me because with the Iraq war and then Hurricane Katrina in September of 2005, I would say that's probably the lowest point in terms of media coverage. But with the war, you were talking about men and women in the United States military who were under threat and many who were dying and sacrificing their lives. So the arguments were on the merits. I do think about how we didn't have Twitter.
I was going to say, was President Bush on social media at all? Did he go?
No.
Did he have a little machine?
I knew that he liked to go on. I remember he did an interview once that I had set up, and he said, I like to go on the Google.
So he knew what that was.
Of course, yes, of course. He knew. Of course, he would use not social. We didn't really have social media at the time. I mean, it was fairly new in 2007, 2008. Was
I don't think
really
he's a big tweeter even to this day, though. You don't get tweets from him, do you?
I think 41 tweets more than 43.
Yeah, I know.
Actually.
He doesn't strike me the kind of guy. But the personalities of the two presidents and President Obama too, you can make so opposite.
Yes,
Trump is so aggressive.
I think that you had some constructive criticism of how we ran press relations at the White House. That we didn't push back enough on places like
That's what I said.
Okay, that's what you said.
Yeah.
And I think there's some validity to that. However, I also was following the lead of the president, and so we didn't complain about media bias so much. Now, President Trump has a different approach, and he takes them on for better or worse. And that is his style. But
I got a letter from Bush the Elder about media bias, and I promised him I wouldn't read it while he was still alive, so I can't tell you what the letter is.
Okay.
But it addresses how the media treated his son.
Oh,
okay?
He's not himself, but
not
his son.
No,
okay.
His son.
Yeah, he was very upset about that.
And it's a fascinating letter, and he wrote it to me personally, okay? So you guys, you decided you were going to pretty much ignore most of the over-the-top.
I think Ed Gillespie
but here's the
was
question.
aggressive.
Here's the question. Not anywhere near this.
No.
Does it help the country for the president to hit back hard, as Mr. Trump is doing, against what he sees as fake news, dishonest media? Does that help the country?
Well, I think when he says in his interview with you that what will matter at the end is can he get results? Do jobs come back in the economy?
Right.
In these arguments like they're having today over whether the media has ignored covering terrorist attacks, and there's some...
It's ridiculous.
That is going to get news coverage, and so they've done some really good things, but the media will always cover controversy over the substance.
But it's not covering controversy. It's putting importance in places that doesn't deserve it. I mean, look, the Trump administration believes that low-level terror attacks have been ignored largely by the national and international media, and they provided a list of about 80 of them, okay? So what? Does that affect anybody? It doesn't affect anybody, other than to say that the national media basically is looking to say, and they are, he's a liar.
Well, here's the thing. Why give them any reason if they're not going to give you that? So on that list, for example, are all these terrorist attacks that have actually been covered. So then they have to spend
No, they haven't been covered.
Well,
there's a lot of them that haven't.
Okay, but they're saying that there's several. Why include then San Bernardino, Nice, and Paris on that list?
I don't even bother with this because it's not important.
Okay.
But what I'm saying to you, the answer to the question that you just posed is that Trump isn't going to let a dishonest media run rampant. He's going to hit them.
And they are going to look for any holes in his argument. And so why provide the holes? That is,
I mean, there's got to be a little bit more discipline.
They take their foot off the gas just a little bit on that, and they have a lot to show already.
Last question, I got to go with. Did you ever say to President Bush, don't say that? I suggest you don't say that.
I wouldn't say that if I were you. Absolutely.
Did he listen to you?
Yes, of course.
Okay, because everyone does. Dana Perino, everybody. I don't listen to it, but everyone else does. We come right back, Law and Order. Will the courts unblock President Trump's executive order concerning refugees? Then Gutfeld and McGurk on Trump derangement syndrome. Up ahead.
The #1 cable news show for 16 years and counting.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Bill O'Reilly in the Law and Order segment tonight. Let's bring in attorneys and Fox News analysts Ebony Williams and Kimberly Guilfoyle. So we're monitoring the deliberations. There are 3 judges that are going to rule on an appeal on whether President Trump's order about refugees in the 7 nations can go forward or not. First of all, your prediction. Will the order be allowed to go forward?
The order should be allowed to go forward based on the law.
Okay,
however, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, I feel consistently over studying for 20 years, they are very liberal, and I think it'll come down to 2-1, and that they will favor, in fact, this temporary restraining order staying.
Okay, so that goes to the Supreme Court after that?
Where I do believe it will prevail.
Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I think the statutory language is clear, Bill. President Trump has full authority on this, but I do agree with KG. The Ninth Circuit is very liberal. I think they're going to limit this
So once again, the judges will violate their oath, and they'll try to make policy rather than upholding the law. And I say that there are 2 liberal judges and 1 moderate judge who are listening to the case, because Ms. Guilfoyle now is going to read you, all right, the statute. Go ahead.
And this clearly states that the president has the authority to do this.
And this is federal law. Why?
Correct. And this is federal law, USC 1182, Section F. Whenever the president finds that the entry of any aliens or of any class of aliens into the United States would be detrimental to the interests of the United States, he may, by proclamation and for such period as he shall deem necessary, he's the one that has the authority, and for such period as he shall deem necessary, suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens as immigrants or non-immigrants, or impose on the entry of aliens any restrictions he may deem appropriate.
So push back a little bit here, though. I think when we listen to the questioning from the court on this, they really, I don't think, appreciate it not having the ability to scrutinize or review. I think KG's right, but that's what they
What she just read, Ebony.
Yes.
What she just
is the law.
That's the law.
Yes.
So well, let's all go home and that's it.
Well, and it's
over, right? Why are we even bothering?
That's what you would think, but they were asking questions like, well, didn't Rudy Giuliani say this and call it a Muslim ban on television?
All of that is
and don't we have the right to scrutinize? scrutinize and review the president's authority. That's their issue.
But this is what the law says.
Right,
so if the law
says.
gets changed, which Congress can do, then those judges can say, shouldn't we have? But they can't make law, and that's what our judicial system is becoming corrupt.
Yeah, we don't want to act.
No, you're right.
Would you both agree that our judicial system is becoming corrupt because judges who get power then feel that they have the right to make law?
Right. Guess what they're supposed to do, Bill? They're supposed to examine the president's executive order and look at the four corners of the document,
whether they like it or not,
and not ask all these other questions that are not pertinent to the issue. He has the authority based on this statute. The executive order specifically references this.
Agree.
I agree, but I think the tension I heard from the court tonight, Bill, was that they felt also conflicted around the constitutional requirements that they also sort of uphold. You're right, but I think they felt torn.
Yeah.
So what?
The Constitution over here, President Trump's authority over there.
Right.
All right? Their job is to uphold the law. Watch the factor. I mean, come on. This bothers me because judges are not supposed to make law. And I don't care whether you agree or disagree. If this continues, we're not going to have a country anymore. Ladies, thanks very much. Gutfeld and McGurk on deck. In my opinion, the hatred towards President Trump's getting worse in some precincts. But why? The boys will explain as the factor continues all across the USA and all around the world. Back in the book segment tonight, what the heck just happened? Now, you would think after about 3 weeks, the Trump hatred would die down a little. Not so.
Our president lies pathologically. He has a staff lie pathologically, and then he attacks the free press, he attacks the judiciary, and this is what starts authoritarianism. Donald Trump is a danger to the republic, and we need to wake up in America to understand the harms that he's causing our country.
This is the most outrageous and ridiculous president that this country has ever had. All that Nancy Pelosi said was she was not ready yet to talk about impeachment. I'm ready to talk about it.
Here now to discuss the Trump derangement syndrome that both of those congresspeople have, Bernard McGurk and Greg Gutfeld. So look, you're an amateur psychologist.
I am, that's true.
You'd have to be so to sit there on the 5 every day. You'd have to. I mean, you'd have to be there.
I have my own little practice.
What's the why behind the hatred?
Well, the fact is, Krauthammer has said this before, the right thinks the left is wrong, but the left thinks the right is evil. Trump may not be a normal candidate, but his agenda is fairly normal. He's not, he's a centrist. If you replace Trump with a boring candidate, they would still come after him because they think Republicans, just by nature, are evil. So now they've convinced themselves that Trump is worse than global warming, meteor strikes, and the new season of Will and Grace combined, that he could actually destroy the earth. It's amazing. Maxine Waters actually thinks that Putin invaded Korea. That's what's happening. They're losing their minds.
And you say, McGurk?
I say that, look, first of all, they've always hated him, but now they see him, the hatred's been amped up. They see him in a presidential setting, signing executive orders, appointing judges, quote-unquote, normalizing Trump, as they put it, and that just drives them extreme.
Okay, but both of you guys would, I think, admit that while he was a businessman, an apprentice person, and TV guy, we didn't see this kind of hatred, all right? Some people thought he was annoying. Some people didn't like his style. Okay. But, you know, when I would go to a game with him, most of the people would applaud when he came up on the Jumbotron. I mean, it wasn't this way. But now that he is a politician, Gutfeld,
yes,
all right, that has changed dramatically, even though, as you rightly pointed out, one of the few times in your life that you were correct.
Right.
He's not an ideologue. He's not a conservative thumper.
Yeah. I, like you, noticed this when him and I would go for long walks on the beach. Everybody was very happy to see him, but not so much anymore. I think he's ticking off the right people, Bill. It hardens me to see people like Michael Moore, other celebrities, and crazy left-wing professors lose their stuff over him. That means he's doing something right.
You know what I think it is? Because I'm going to have to tell you guys what it is.
All right.
It's the birther stuff.
Birther stuff.
The birther stuff, that's what changed it all. Because, as you know, Donald Trump went after President Obama, saying that he didn't believe his birth certificate was real, that he might have been born outside the country, an illegitimate president. When he did that, all of the supporters fervent supporters of Barack Obama hated him. And that has now expanded. Does that sound crazy?
Well, that's true also, but they oppose his agenda. The open borders crowd, the environmental
but that's
activists,
a small
zealots,
part of it.
I think that's a large part of it, and then they lose on the merits of those arguments with the American people.
No,
so the easiest way to make him ineffective is to demonize him by calling him a Nazi, a racist, and a bigot.
Right,
He can buy a puppy, he can buy 10 puppies, he can play hide and seek with Barron, he can even transition to a woman, and it doesn't matter.
No, if he transitioned to a woman, Gutfeld knows that he would regain some popularity.
I would marry him.
Okay, you wouldn't
We
be
know
asked.
that. No, but you're right. You're right. If they would have demonized Mitt Romney, John McCain,
But
anybody.
not like this.
I think they. If you're a
Not like
Republican,
this.
you are evil, not wrong.
True, but this is now hysteria.
Yeah.
That's where it is. It's hysteria. And
But at least they waited a month.
And but he also punches back. He sticks it to him, and they can't. He's not being conciliatory, quote unquote.
Right.
He's being as bold.